welcome folks to, I mean, in my mind, this is our Christmas party, right? We all work remote.
It's as close as it gets.
Yeah. Right, so people are starting to roll in now, so we'll give it another couple of minutes and then we'll get going. Do feel free to say hello in the chat. We're all nice.
Most of the time, at least.
Great. Okay, so 2 minutes past and we'll begin. And I've just noticed I'm now the only one wearing a hat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take mine off.
I think you got
There we go.
All right.
We've let the team down.
We did.
I mean, well, to be honest with you, this hat belongs to my daughter, so it gives you some idea of how comfortable it was as well. So, okay, great. Well, thanks for joining us today, folks. Welcome to Ringing in the Rankings, Lumar Pro Professional Services 2024 SEO Predictions chat. If you've been on one of these webinars before, this one today is going to be especially kind of freewheeling, I guess is the best way to put it. Obviously, we are just going to be sharing opinions and talking about kind of the experience that we've had this year and what we think is going to be a big factor next year. If you do have, normally I kind of say in terms of chat and things like that, to flag that stuff up, or to put it up, and we'll mention it at the end. But as I say, this is a little bit more collaborative today, so do feel free to just have a conversation with us and share what you think as you go. Any questions we'll probably get to at the end. But if you have anything that you want to contribute while we're talking, then do feel free to throw it in the chat. So that said, let's get on with housekeeping at the start. So I'm just looking at where everybody's from. People in from London, nice to see. Anyway, yes, closed captions. Closed captions are enabled. If you click on the closed caption CC icon within Zoom, you can enable that. If you can't initially find it, you might need to click into the More section first and find it in there. Choose Show Subtitle, and you can view a live transcript and see how it deals with our accents. And then finally, there will be a webinar recording of this that will go live in a few days. It'll be fully subtitled, and you'll get access to that via your email in, say, a couple of days after this webinar. So who have we got today? My name's Chris. I'm a senior technical SEO at Lumar. Been in the SEO industry for nearly 15 years now. Mainly technical all that time, kind of working for mainly price comparison sites in the UK, and now obviously working with all the clients at Lumar. Natalie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone, I'm Natalie. I am also senior technical SEO here at Lumar. I've been on the team for about 2.5 years. Been working in kind of the wider SEO industry now for about 7 years. And I actually started very much in more of sort of the content and on-page side of SEO. So I actually started as like a content writer for the web and kind of moved on from there. But yeah, here at Lumar, obviously focusing primarily on technical, as I have done for the last few years. Yeah, that's me.
And finally,
well, just to keep things utterly confusing, I'm also Chris and a senior technical SEO here at Lumar. Been in the SEO space for probably a little over a decade now. Most of my experience has been in SEO strategy and things of that sort. The past 4 years have been focused on technical SEO though as well.
great. So here's quickly what we're going to go over today. I mean, spoilers, these are our predictions within this slide. We're going to go over some intros and housekeeping, which I think we've basically just done. And then we're going to jump into each of these topics for a few minutes and then some Q&A at the end. And then we'll be done and dusted by, I think, about 1/4 to the hour, something like that, maybe 10 to. So last little bit of housekeeping. Questions, as I say, please type them into the Q&A box. at the bottom of the screen. At the end of the session, you'll be asked to give us some feedback. It takes less than a minute to complete. Please do. It lets us know how we can make these webinars even better. And the on-demand version, as I said before, will be shared in a few days. So before we start, we always do a poll. And the poll today is, which of our predictions do you think will have the biggest impact for SEO in 2024? And you should have a little pop-up on your screen now that that allows you to pick one. And we'll give you a few seconds, and then we'll see what comes up. And I think I know. Well, do I actually? I'm not sure which one's gonna win, but I think it's going to be between two.
I think we got some ideas.
based on the questions that we've already had. I've got a feeling I know which way this is going to go. So we'll see. And drum roll. Oh, interesting. So the winner was the increased importance of human first content, followed closely by optimizing websites for AI, and then it's all about AI. I guess the AI vote is kind of split a little bit between those two.
Maybe that's
I would agree.
UX accessibility 9%, and then keeping up with algo updates 3%. Although I suppose we're always doing that, right? So cool. Thank you very much, folks. And with that, we'll jump into it. So first thing we want to talk about today is the increased importance of human first contact. Obviously, we've seen a lot of stuff around this in the last few weeks as the SERPs have gone absolutely crazy. But I think, Chris, I'm going to pass over to you first, and let's go.
Sure. If you're not writing for a human being, a person, please stop what you're doing and do it now. If you are still in the phase of writing for search positioning or anything like that, then you're kind of hustling backwards at that point. This is going to be super important moving forward. I don't think that we didn't need the poll to tell us that, right? This is the focus either way, whether you think AI is going to play a bigger role in SERPs features, or whether you think, just whatever you feel like your content's going to produce, this is the way to go. If you're not writing for a human first, if you're not, if the core algorithm updates and the helpful content updates that we had this year didn't convince you that content that targets people versus positioning matters, I don't know what will, but definitely this is the focus.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for me has been in the last couple of months, this thing, and to be fair, they have massively over-indexed towards Reddit and things, well, especially Reddit. We've seen the parasites have a field day on it. But at the end of the day, if you've got a very specific question, quite often Reddit is where I find the answer, right? And Reddit is where I find the answer without it being written in a 500-word blog post designed to try and rank first for a keyword. You know what I mean? It's a tricky situation. But yeah, I mean, obviously, for a long time, forums have been kind of seen as a little bit low quality, right, or low interest, and I think I wonder how much that's going to change in the next in the next 12 months. I mean, Natalie,
I was just going to add, so I think it was probably about a year ago, right, that EAT changed to EEAT, however you want to say it. And I think that it is really interesting. So I think it was one of the algorithm updates, August, September, October, take your pick, that sites, as you say, like Reddit and Quora kind of really saw a visibility increase. And I think that's really interesting because it does show that shift. I mean, we're obviously talking about Google specifically, but that shift towards kind of content that is written by people with actual experience and actual expertise, and kind of, well, I say that, how much expertise do some people on Reddit have, but the actual experience and that kind of human side. Like, I know that Google sort of relaxed maybe some of the phrasing that they've used around content that's generated by AI, and kind of moved away from being completely against that, and moved towards saying, as long as the content is good quality, that it should still rank and it should still be visible. But I do think it's really interesting that obviously that kind of focus on expertise and that focus on a user sort of having the experience to share, to be able to share content that is kind of authentic, I guess, is seemingly very important still.
It's interesting, just where we're going with this, because in my personal opinion, writing for a human being is more not just genuine, but almost easier, right? Like it takes a lot of work to have over-optimized SEO content, whereas just writing the natural explanation or the natural just path of content seems a lot easier to do for a human being. Yet we still try to circumvent that and just stuff it with keywords. And like you said, a 500-word block on a page that doesn't really need that content there.
Yeah, and I think the AI thing is interesting because we've all said it's interesting now, so that's good. We've cleared that up. It's definitely interesting. But the AI thing, when I was working on travel sites years ago, we were trying to find a way to add content to pages, like human readable content, if you know what I mean. But what we found was if you've got 50,000 hotels in your database, there's only so many ways you can say it's 1 mile from the beach. You know what I mean? Like, so content like that, by all means, offload into offload to AI, things like that. But yeah, I think what a lot of SEOs saw, and again, I think sometimes when I say a lot of SEOs, you know, quite often looking at the people who will spin up a 30,000 page site over a weekend and then be confused when it stops ranking after a few days. That's not that's not what Google's after, right? You know, by all means, use it. I mean, AI, what from my experience of it anyway, it's useful as, and I'm aware I'm kind of moving into the next topic a little bit here. It's useful when you use it to add, you know what I mean, to human written stuff or human generated things. It's a tool more than anything else.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess
Sorry.
with that, yeah, we'll jump into the next topic, which is it's all about AI, and this one's going to bleed, I think, a little bit into number 3 as well. But Natalie, I'm going to pass over to you on this one. It's all about AI, or is it?
I think they do. Yeah, all of these kind of interconnect. There's definitely some overlap. But yeah, so when I was kind of thinking about this topic, and as you say, AI is kind of, I guess, the big talking point across our industry and across kind of multiple industries right now, I guess. And obviously for the purpose of this webinar, we've tried to sort of split it into 2 sections. So the first one, the one that I'm kind of focusing on, is the kind of the potential that AI has to make our jobs as SEOs easier. Obviously, we can then also go on to talk about kind of optimizing your website for AI and search generative. Completely lost it, SGE. But yeah, in terms of kind of AI making our jobs easier, I just remember, I mean, ChatGPT is the big one, obviously, and there are tons of other tools out there. But that was really the one where there was like this, it seemed like a very seismic shift within the industry. And there were so many articles being published around kind of 20 of the best prompts that SEOs can use to kind of cut down all of this time that it takes to do sort of some of the more menial tasks. I have to say, in the year or so that that's been available, I feel like I just haven't used it that much. I haven't utilized it that much. There's always, I mean, obviously it's different. A lot of those kind of use cases, I guess, were more focused on sort of content, and things like keyword research and things would come up an awful lot. And that's kind of not something that fills my day anymore. And I guess if you don't have the use case, and obviously you're not going to use the technology. But yeah, I think kind of for the most part, I've been using it for very like menial tasks. So things like formatting schema, that's always a great one. So if you're working on a piece of schema and you've kind of got it in a huge block, I like asking ChatGPT to kind of format it, put all the indents in. But I wouldn't go as far as asking a tool like that to actually create schema for me. Maybe that's just a lack of trust, I guess, on my side. But yeah, I don't know whether either of you have kind of found more uses for it day to day.
I don't know that I found more uses for it, but I've found those same uses, and it's given me more time back in my day. I've used it for some things like keyword research. I've certainly used it for at least framing content, not writing out whole pages by any means, but like understanding like topics or kind of creating outlines. Like you, I've used it for formatting schema, and I've used it for data segmentation. And it's been really useful for that. And even some light code, some JavaScript, some things like that. It saved me some time, but nothing's been really transformative for me. I've never done any of these tasks and been like, man, I could not have done this without chat. Or, it hasn't saved me massive amounts of time and hasn't cut the time in half. So it's useful. It's a tool. I think when used properly, it can be really helpful for SEOs, but I don't think it's ever going to replace the knowledge that you need or anything like that.
Yeah, the big thing for me again is there's been I think the first time I realized how kind of useful it can be as a tool was I needed to generate a load of links basically for as in write out a load of URLs for clients, as in these pages should exist or whatever, and I need to do links for each state in the United States. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know. I can't name all the states in the United States, and from what I understand, I don't think most Americans can either, right? So being able to say to a tool, hey, write me a bunch of HTML links to each of the states with the anchor text being name of state and then industry, that saves me a whole load of time. So that stuff's been really, really useful. And yeah, Jim Yarrow in the chat is saying AI's helped me with figuring out how to do things in GA4 that I don't know how to do off the top of my head. And this is it. I think Jim makes a good point here. Jim, I'm assuming that is kind of, I know how to use UA. I know how to use universal analytics. These things don't transfer. I don't know how to do it in GA4. I find the big thing I find is that sometimes, say, if you're writing a regex, and quite often if I get annoyed with, I'm that guy, I like writing regex, I like the puzzle, but sometimes if I get really annoyed with it, I will ask ChatGPT. And if it doesn't work, it's annoying because you don't necessarily know why it hasn't worked. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes you need to know why it hasn't worked to refine your query, your prompt. Because this is the other problem I find, and again, I don't know if this is a me thing. Sometimes I don't know how to verbalize what I want to do.
Yeah, no, I get that totally. Some people do very cool things with it, and I just think I haven't quite kind of got the hang of what it wants from a prompt, I don't think.
Yeah, and to be fair, yeah, Jim has just made the good point that you should ask why it isn't working.
Things like, again, I go back to schema. Sorry, Chris, go for it.
No, I was just saying this is kind of the thing, like in itself, writing a prompt has now become a skill set you need to acquire to properly use ChatGPT. It's not only just knowing what to ask, it's knowing how to ask, it's knowing which iteration, like you could write the same prompt 4 different ways and get 4 different answers. So that in itself is another layer of all this.
And the nice thing with chat is I don't have to, if I explain something to chat, I don't have the 4 seconds of silence before a human goes, I didn't understand that, sorry, Chris, which is normally what I end up getting, right? So so like today I excuse me, was writing some schema, and I just find that I couldn't even properly I couldn't have explained to another human being, I couldn't explain to anybody what I was trying to get out of my head. So yeah, I think that's, I mean, it's a skill issue on my part, right? But I think ultimately it's really, really stands to make a huge difference. I guess that moves us nicely onto, and I guess we can flick between the two as we're still going. AIO, which I've got a 3-year-old, and it makes me think of Old MacDonald every single time. Every single time we do that. Sorry, Natalie, I think I might have cut you off there.
Oh, no, you're fine. No, I was just going to say, going back again to kind of Jim's point, when working on schema, something I found it really useful for, and I don't know if anyone else has done this, but when you're in the schema validator tool and you're sitting there and it's saying that there's like a rogue curly bracket or a rogue comma or something like that, rather than spending 20 minutes trying to work out where that is, just being able to go in and ask ChatGPT Perfect.
Yeah,
That does save me a lot of time because, yeah, I spend a lot of time doing that.
whoever decided that JSON should consist almost exclusively of curly brackets and square brackets and brackets.
And the fact that
It's-
one tiny little error can mess up the entire thing.
It's lovely when it's formatted, but when it's dumped in the bottom of the page minimized, it's a whole other ball game.
Yeah.
And commas, Kathy Brown. Yeah, I just want to quickly point out, by the way, somebody in the chat who I initially thought was staging some sort of protest to what we were saying, Sylvie. Her dog was on her keyboard, so it is full Christmas party at this stage.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, that's just a lot of just gibberish. And I was like, this person really doesn't love what we have to say. And then I was like, okay, makes sense. The dog didn't like us. It's fine.
So yeah, optimizing websites for AI search. Chris.
Yeah. I want to have the groundbreaking, just earth-shattering thing to say about optimizing for AI, but the sad and honest thing is like, optimize your site the way you should. I do think it changes how you think about optimization. I think with AI, it makes people rethink their keyword research, focusing a lot more on long tail keywords. I think we already established that with AI, a lot of the things you do with schema is going to be affected by this. So like rethinking your schema markup strategy is going to be a big deal. Content wise, I think it's kind of this very cyclical thing where you use AI to optimize your content. Your content has to be optimized for AI now. SGE, you want that position, right? You want Google to serve that up at the top of the search results. And now you think about how you're writing for that response when you read a few of those. So I think it makes you rethink the things you've always been doing and how to go a little bit deeper. No longer are you taking like 5 or 6 money keywords and trying to optimize for those. You need to be optimizing for phrases. You need to think about how things are searched with voice search. All those things come into play. And those are things you should have been doing already. That's not anything new or special that we're talking about here. It just makes you take that second look and stop and pause about how you're optimizing your site now.
Yeah, I think for me, a big thing, and this goes right back to what we talked about human first, ironically. One thing that AI is great at doing is writing in the style of or adopting the tone of. So giving AI a page and saying, does this sound like it was written by someone who is friendly and discussing the conversation in a friendly and conversant way, which is why Reddit does so well, right? Because it cuts out all the junk around it. You know, I mean, it cuts out a lot of the stuff and it just gives you the answer. I got this error. I did this to fix it. So that for me is going to be a big thing, because it feels like they're going to be far better at basically understanding what is genuine human. Ironically, they're going to be better at understanding genuine human conversation. And I cut you off again, Natalie.
No, I don't think you did. No, you're absolutely fine. So yeah, all I was going to say, I guess, and it's kind of like a follow-up question and kind of an impossible question to answer, but how, I mean, like Chris said, I guess, Chris Steele, I guess it's all about sort of making sure that you're optimizing your site in a way that, yes, it's beneficial for AI, but also that it's beneficial just generally, and it's kind of enhancing that user experience anyway. Because I'm not convinced, like, I mean, so obviously Bing and Google have kind of been going at it for a while now, and both kind of really focusing on AI and kind of building out their systems and that technology. Bing is arguably a lot further ahead than Google is, and kind of various tests that people have done, kind of comparing SGE and BingBot and all that kind of thing, kind of shows that. But when Bing's kind of publishing these metrics and kind of saying, you know, we've hit 100 million users this month, which I think was a few months ago, when you actually zoom out of that, it's not taking anything away from Google's market share whatsoever. And so I just think, is it too early to kind of really be focusing and honing in on saying, okay, I need to optimize my site for AI search and for all these new features that are going to be appearing in search? Do you want to put all your eggs in that basket right now? I'm not totally convinced.
A thing that actually has just come up in the chat from, and I apologize if I pronounced this wrong, Kumarpal, was saying, what's the point of optimizing for AI search features like SGE? Users can get answers within the SERP, within SGE. Features like SGE are going to hurt clicks to websites. Now, I have had a conversation with a client who have a product, like a paid-for product, but a lot of their traffic comes from, they produce a lot of news content and written stuff, and that's where they get a lot of their traffic from. And we had the conversation the other day that was kind of like, do we just need to tell our higher ups that, yeah, we're going to start getting fewer clicks now, and the best we can hope for is to try and appear in that, the little carousel on the side of SGE that kind of says, answers taken from some of these sources. Do we just try and appear in that now? And a little bit of me was like, maybe, especially if you are in, it frightens me a bit how happily Google will stick these things on YMYL stuff, where I think in some instances, legally speaking, you're not really allowed to say much, in terms of, financial advice and things like that. But Google will put them on there and be like, hey, this content came from these places, but it then means that they're not getting those clicks through. But what's the point? I don't want to say what's the point. But then, we also have clients that kind of say, well, we want to block ChatGPT entirely via robots. And it's going to be interesting. One of those sides is going to win. And I'm not sure which. And like Kathy said in the chat, yeah, brand awareness is a thing. For some clients now, it's just going to be about appearing in the search as many places as you can.
And that's the side that I tend to fall on, because you're right. SGE is going to serve up answers that don't require a click-through response anymore. But at the end of the day, it does also cite its sources. So if you're creating the most compelling content or subject matter information about a certain topic or about a product, it still has to cite where it comes from. You might not get the click, but you're still getting the awareness. And if you're selling a pay-for product, a buying action still has to be taken at some point.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Jim's just saying in the chat again about the carousel of businesses on the side getting listed in the visible part, something that can drive traffic. Absolutely. If you're in the first 3 shown. So you've got page 1 within page 1 now, right? That's the new thing to start working on. But I think for a long time, I think in a lot of really big competitive spaces as well, a lot of the players in there aren't just thinking about the 10 blue links anymore. They're thinking about, appearing in image search and in shopping listings and everywhere they can. And then obviously, at the same time, those clicks that you're losing from SGE, not sure of the numbers, but obviously TikTok is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm not one of these people who thinks that it's the new Google yet. But I'm starting to find that for certain queries, I'll go to TikTok first. Maybe if I have to find out something that young people are doing, I go to TikTok first. Yeah, I'm looking at the time and I'm going to quickly move us on, I think. UX and accessibility for SEO. Natalie.
Yeah, so I think, again, these all tie so closely together. But I think for me, when I was thinking about this specific point, it's all about sort of the ability to zoom out, I guess, and take a more holistic view of what we do as SEOs. And I think that gone are the days where you would have kind of a UX team or a CRO team and an SEO team kind of working in silo. It feels like it's more important than ever that everybody has got that ability to kind of zoom out and make sure that you are working as one and kind of working towards the same goals. And it's very much about kind of when we talk about like accessibility and that kind of thing as well, it's very much about like going back to human first content and ensuring that, yes, the words on the page are kind of written for humans and meet the intent of humans. But also that the kind of structure of the page and the way that the page looks and the way the site is formatted, I guess, is able to signpost the user in the right way. We've seen kind of from SGE, I know you've just mentioned like zero click searches and all that kind of thing. And I guess that's Google sort of being able to, rather than just think, okay, I'm going to look at what a user is searching for and rank these 10 pages that I think is relevant. We've seen for years now that Google's been moving towards this focus on kind of really signposting and helping the user throughout their search journey. So that's why you've got so many rich snippets, right? That's why you've got all this information in SGE, because it's sort of enabling the user to move from one query to the next and sort of develop their understanding and their curiosity, I guess. And so I think that's going to be really important for sites to be able to mimic that as best they can.
I think.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. Ashley, who used to work here, used to have a good line on accessibility in particular, where she used to say, basically, if you're on a website, you're one of three types of people, and all you need to worry about accessibility. Either you're a nice person, and so you should do it to make your site more accessible, or you're a business person, in which case you should do it because more accessible sites make more money, or you're an asshole, at which point you should still do it because you're going to get sued if you don't, right? So, and I think that tied in with the fact that I think pretty recently, something came out from one of the many different court cases and things that Google's always involved in, that click backwards and forward, what we used to call bounce rate, is more of a thing than we kind of thought. You know what I mean? And don't forget, there are still human content raters working for Google. And Google will fully render pages and check for, distances between clickable buttons and contrast and all these different things. And yeah, it's a 200-point algorithm and blah, 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 blah. But again, as you were saying, all these things start to tie back up. And also, to be frank, an accessible site, as well as in terms of making it accessible for people who are differently what am I trying to say, who may struggle to click on smaller buttons and things like that. Also, by structuring content well for screen readers and things like that, you make it more readable for Google's just a big screen reader, really, right? So it's going to be doing that stuff as well.
Yeah, I think it's driving me bonkers because I can't remember who it was. There was somebody that I was listening to a couple of weeks ago now, and they were talking about like competitive. Even when I started in SEO 7 years ago, there was this idea that you would talk to clients and you would kind of say, oh, well, it's it's difficult to rank and you're dealing with a lot of competitors because this is such a competitive area of search. And this person the other week was kind of saying how it feels like now there's not a non-competitive area. Like there's so much content out there, and it just feels like if your site is falling kind of below par on any of these things, the user experience and the accessibility levels, like you say, in terms of bounce rate, people are going to move off your site and they're going to be able to find the content that they're looking for and that they need somewhere else. And so yeah, it feels super important now more than ever.
Agreed.
Chris, have another go.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just gonna double click on everything you guys have said here, because like the fact that we have sites that are difficult to navigate, difficult to use, functionality on the site doesn't work the way it should, and we think of that as a secondary thing to focus on. We're focusing on, you're worried about human first content and your site isn't usable by a human. Well, I think you kind of have that backwards. And the accessibility part, you said it more candidly than I ever could, Chris. But the fact that you have a site for someone who may have a disability or an issue with using a site, and you're unwilling to look at it from that perspective, I don't know, you're just not really. It kind of gets me when you're more interested in where you want to land in the SERPs than you do provide an experience to a user. I just feel like that's the wrong priority.
And then again, on top of this as well, we're talking about sort of different people who are differently abled and things like that. UX accessibility comes down to, as well as every site works just great on my expensive MacBook on my gigabit fiber connection, right? But it doesn't work well. My local bus provider's website, when I am like, in some area with bad reception, and I just need to know what time the next bus is. This stuff drives me crazy, right? So especially, if you are in an industry where you are focusing kind of in, the global south, or anything like that. Test your website in the situation in which you envisage it being used, or that you want it to be used, because there's no point in challenging in a new market if your 30 meg single page application JavaScript website takes 40 seconds to load on a $100 phone or whatever. Because that's the other thing as well, is I can't remember the stat, and it's an old stat now, but the average phone is about $150, something like that, and it's not an iPhone 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, whatever. It is something that's a lot slower, and you need to be able to provide to those people. And again, this isn't virtue signaling or anything like that. This is just, people can't use your website if it's too slow for them. You know what I mean? We see it a lot with the tool, because obviously we can hit websites quite hard, and some websites really start to struggle when they're used in a kind of non-optimal way, or in a way that's not just kind of load the page, yeah, that looks right, cool, sign it off. So test it. Just say, if you run a bus timetable website, go to your local bus stop and or your local train station or whatever, and see what it's actually like to use, and you may be horribly surprised. Cool. And then finally, and again, this kind of ties up everything back up, keeping up with algorithm updates. We haven't been doing that since 2000 and whatever, right? But it's still going to be a thing. Chris, I think, is this one?
Yeah, I'll take it first. I just kind of giggle at this, keeping up with it. Like, if I've heard this phrase or heard some form of this phrase for over a decade now, you're not going to be able to keep up with them. The thing is to be proactive versus retroactive. What do we have, like 9 or 10 algo updates this year, 4 core algo updates, a helpful content update, and I'm sure I'm missing a few. There were 10 this year. It was so active this year. And who's to say that 2024 won't be worse? So if the idea is like just to get ahead or around the update, it's not going to work. You're never going to produce any kind of positive results doing that. The idea is just generally the best practices that you can put in place, the same things we talked about earlier with good content. Honestly, this is something we haven't talked about today, is making sure you have a good functioning website, not ignoring the errors that you see. Are you doing the right things with 404 pages? I'm not saying you can't have 404s, but are you using them in the right way and doing the right things with them? Are you clearing out any kind of pages that have server level errors? Focus on those things, and you won't have to be worried about a core algo update. Is probably my best advice.
I think the difference this year, especially in the last few months, is like there feels like there's an awful lot of overlapping updates, which maybe we've not seen so much before. But I did see Google published that Q&A right a couple of months ago, which was a very helpful thing. It's at least another resource that we can link people to, rather than just kind of the very top level algorithm update advice. But yeah, they mentioned in that Q&A that actually the number of updates is kind of on a par with at least the last couple of years, like 2021, 22. And actually, like, I think it is definitely daunting. Like, my stomach kind of drops when I see that there's yet another update kind of being launched when the last one has been so recent, or even when there are things that are still rolling out. But actually, when you think about kind of the problem with that, I guess it's because it makes it more difficult to analyze what's happened, and it makes it more difficult to kind of pinpoint certain changes that you're seeing in Google Search Console or whatever it may be, to specific algorithm updates. But actually, we've never really known what any of these updates contain, and so that's kind of not a lot of difference. Like, in the past, obviously, when updates have happened and they've been sort of in silo, yes, you can go ahead and look for trends and kind of see based on that, like if certain sites are moving up and down and that kind of thing, to make assumptions. But that is literally all that it is. It's still guesswork. And so, yeah, I think I hate to say, like, don't panic about it, because that's sort of what Google always says. And yeah, that doesn't always help. But yeah, I think in terms of kind of the amount of algorithm updates that are happening, I actually don't think it's that different to previous.
Yeah, I think a really interesting thing as well that some folks can do. We've mentioned structured data a few times during the call, but a big thing that I feel like I've seen, and I tend to work with quite a few YMYL sites where I think it is maybe a little bit more important. But obviously, for a long time, SEOs, and self included in this, had this kind of approach that Google only supported X type of structured data, by which we meant it was the only structured data that would do something in the SERPs, right? But now we're seeing that if you are using your structured data to do a really good job of saying this piece was written by this person, they went to Harvard and studied this there, and then it was fact checked, or fact checked by this person who's worked in the industry for 35 years, and they went to this place and this place and this place, and they have these qualifications. Here's their LinkedIn, here's their Twitter. You begin to, because again, what I was saying before about YMYL, the last thing Google wants at the end of the day, right, is for some court case where someone is in a situation they could say, because of information I got off your website, I made these decisions and now I can sue you, right? So they need to be as confident as they possibly can in these sites. So we are starting to see that sites in the money space that do a really, really good job of, and you'd never know it to look at the site because obviously it's all just structured data, and because these things don't immediately do anything to the SERPs. But go back, God, it might be 10 years now, to when authorship was a thing. You two, I don't know if you two are SEO old enough to remember authorship, when we used to have authors' pictures next to search results for things.
I do remember that.
Yeah, it's got to be about 10 years ago, right? They've been talking about this then, right? And guess what happened? We immediately started gaming it because that's what SEOs do, and then they took it away, right? But so they're interested in it, and they've been interested in it for a long time because they need to know that this person knows a lot about SEO, as opposed to this is a spun bit of content. Because the problem is now as well, it's really easy to say, write a piece of content in the style of Patrick Stocks, Jamie Indigo, whatever, because there's a whole corpus of their work out there, right? They now need to find a way of saying, well, hey, is this actually this person? Can we link it back to their professional, muckrack, I think it is, that journalists use and things like that. It's a fascinating space to be in. But I think, Natalie, what you said, and Chris, what you said, I think the words keeping up and the picture of the firework on the slide are really apt, in that keeping up is more like, as opposed to just, there's been an algorithm update, what's happened, you need to keep up. It is more like keeping up with someone in a race, you know what I mean? Like, these are going to keep happening. Like they've said, the review updates aren't going to happen anymore. They're just constantly happening now. Review updates just go on forever now. So this stuff is going to be changing all the time. We've seen FAQ schema disappear this year, and in case you've not noticed, FAQ schema has come back. Not as much for anybody. It tends to only be in branded. Well, it tends to index more heavily towards branded search, I've found. But FAQ schema is fully back. So who knows? Who knows what the next? This is the point, right? We're supposed to be telling people what the next 12 months brings, but
I get what you're saying, Chris. And the one thing that gets me when I think about this, because you're right, Natalie, maybe if we look back 10 or so, algo updates isn't so uncommon. I really do personally feel like we've gotten less feedback from both the community and from Google about the impact of the algorithm updates, right? Like, it's not enough to say it's a core algo update. Like, what did it specifically adjust? What is it doing? Like, we know what helpful content does, right? They gave us some real clear documentation on what they deemed helpful content. But like, I feel like this year we've had less feedback about what the core updates really focused on adjusting or changing, which makes it hard to quote unquote keep up with them.
But I think ultimately, like we've all said, the likelihood is Google's not going to turn around and say, well, actually, what we want now is poor quality, badly linked content on websites that barely work, please.
Agreed. They're not going to give you specifics. I would take the generalized statements they usually kind of put out about, oh, this is what you can do.
Right then, let's move over into questions. If you've got any questions, do feel free to drop in the Q&A, but we do have some pre-loaded questions that I'm going to get to now. I'm just moving some things on my monitor so I can see them. First one, people are already asking this: how do we show up more prominently in generative AI results? I think they envision that LLMs are frequently refreshed like search results, but they're not. So it's a longer game. That's a fair point. So again, I'll kind of cut back to the main question: is how do we show up more prominently in generative AI results? It's the look of fear. I'm gonna jump straight into this one, and I think again a lot of it comes down to what's it called now? There is a score. Dave Smart has a tool for checking it really easily on Tame the Bots. It's essentially Google's confidence score in in what a certain entity is. Again, all that is linked to things like structured data, stuff like that. The more you can demonstrate to Google that you are a worthy source, the more you will start to appear. We have one client that Google actually used as an example of like good authoritative content fairly recently, which is really helpful because it means that we can kind of go, right, okay, well, we can see what they're doing with them, and that really helps us understand. And guess what? They do quite well in SGE. So there we go, right?
And I think, like you say as well, sort of not so much focusing on structured data, we keep coming back to it, but not so much focusing on the stuff that is kind of supported by Google and appears when you search in like the Google Rich Snippets tester, but actually just marking up your content for the sake of marking up your content. Like I think that's going to be really important. And actually Google over the last couple of months has increased its support for various types of structured data that it wasn't supporting previously. So I think, yeah, it's about kind of giving search engines, and I mean tons of tools and systems use structured data in some way or another. It's definitely not like a Google owned thing. So yeah, I think that's going to be important as well, and also kind of focusing on like multimedia and multimodal content. So like video, images, that kind of thing seems to be becoming more and more important as well.
And then final one question from in the Q&A. Do you think brands will increasingly link to their Reddit profiles on their websites? You
gonna go or you want me to go?
No, you go, Chris. You go. I cut you off already.
You're fine. I do think they're going to leverage Reddit more moving forward. This is something that we kind of started with in our first conversation about how Reddit is becoming a more common source, especially with some of the AI generated results. I do think brands are going to start leveraging this more because it's something that's already out there and they just kind of put it on the back burner recently or in the past. And now they're starting to see that it can be a useful tool.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I don't know about linking to their Reddit profiles, but I do think you'll start to see smart brands be more active on there and using it to answer questions. Because again, if I've got, I mean, surprise, surprise, I'm a nerd, right? Imagine that. There's a cabinet full of Warhammer there, right? But if I've got a technical issue with something, and I Google it, and the first response is somebody saying, "Oh, that's a heap of trash. That company's useless. They said they were going to fix it in an update and they never did." If I'm that brand, that ranks well, right? You can get in there and say, "Well, actually, we did fix that in, this post is a little bit old." You can do that reputation management, link to this stuff, and say at the end of the day, Reddit's going to start ranking really high for a lot of keywords that you want to be involved in, right? So doing this stuff is going to make your life easier in terms of, say, one reputation management side, and also from an actual linking side. You know what I mean? Get customers into what they actually want. Otherwise, all that's going to happen is that somebody's going to leave thinking, "Oh, well, this thing I bought is trash. Everyone on Reddit says so," and they never updated it. And you'd be amazed that some people just won't check. They won't update their own things. You know what I mean? So, cool. Any more from either of you on that stuff?
think we covered it.
Summed up perfectly.
Great. We've got no more open questions, and I said we'd be finished at about 10 to, so here we go. As usual, if you're interested in some more stuff, there's a QR code. 50 minutes, and that's the bit I struggle with. There's a QR code on your screen if you'd like to get a demo of the Lumar tool. The Lumar blog is still live with a really good guest posts on there from Jess Peck. Jess Peck's one of my favorite people in SEO. If you ever meet Jess Peck, ask her how she ended up with, I think, was it 8 drinks all of her own at last Brighton SEO. And then our next webinar, going back to basics, old school if you like, is optimizing your website's technical SEO performance, which we like to think we know about. That's on the 24th of January 2024, so plenty of time after Christmas to get back into the office. It'll be dark outside. It'll be, unless you live in Australia, I suppose. It'll be, so you can come along and join us. So yeah, Natalie, Chris, thank you very much. And everybody came. Thank you, especially if you're still here. And yes, I guess we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.